The date is October 8th, 1912, and you've got a problem. The New York Giants will be hosting the Boston Red Sox up at Brush Stadium for Game 1 of the World Series tonight, but you couldn't get tickets. How will you find out what's happening? Radio won't start broadcasting baseball until 1921, television won't catch up until 1939, and the internet is science fiction. So what's a fan to do? You could try to wait until morning when you could read the paper, but Steve, in the apartment across the hall, will be at the game tonight, and you just know that guy's gonna knock on your door at midnight to tell you all about it, and you better know what happened before then. Don't worry though, the New York Herald has you covered. All you have to do is make it to the Herald building at 34th and Broadway before game time, and hope you can find a spot with a view of the Playograph. Before you could check the game on your phone, before Phil Rizzuto ever exclaimed, "Holy cow!" and before Grant McNamee ever picked up a microphone, there was the Playograph. Baseball's popularity exploded in the first quarter of the 20th century, and big games, especially the World Series beginning in 1905, were social events. Because stadiums could only fit 15 or 20,000 people, everyone else was stuck waiting until the next day to find out what happened. Out of this desire to be a part of the action as it happened, various companies and inventors rose to the challenge. Beginning in at least the 1880s, baseball would be displayed to a viewing public outside the stadium with specialized bulletin boards with pins for the players and plays. But with the sport's rise in popularity, these scoreboards began to take on increasingly elaborate and electronic forms, seeking to not only relay game information, but in some cases, mimic the game itself as much as possible.
Broadway, beneath the west windows of the New York Herald building, will be the mecca of baseball fans this week when the World's Championship Series, reproduced with lifelike fidelity on the Evening Telegram's Playograph, will be shown to the thousands who, for reasons of their own, cannot get to the Polo Ground or to Philadelphia. Following the precedent established 2 years ago, the Evening Telegram will give the news of the games between the Giants and Athletics in the most vivid manner possible, that of reproducing as perfectly as a machine can do it, the struggle of the Diamond leaders. 2 years have demonstrated that there is a tremendous popular appeal in the Playograph, with the Evening Telegram's direct wires from the baseball grounds carrying accurate and immediate detailed play and score. From a staff of writers, the experts handling the Playograph are enabled to show almost instantly, on the moving scoreboard and reproduction of the diamond, just what is taking place. Alert men handle every detail of the mechanical board so that the spectator can see who is at bat, who on bases, where the ball is hit to, and just how the sphere is retrieved. With the game played right before them, the spectator in Herald Square wastes no envy on the one who paid $3 or more for a seat at the Polo Ground or Sheeb Park. More spectators see the game on the side of the Herald building than at either of the parks.
Newspapers, already equipped with telegraph lines, were the ones to realize the potential marketing opportunity offered by these electric scoreboards. Come October, in major cities across the country, especially if that city's team was playing, newspapers would install these scoreboards on their buildings and use their telegraphs to receive up-to-the-minute play information. In smaller communities and out-of-the-way places, these scoreboards were simple chalk boards or bulletin boards, like this one set up at Walter Reed General Hospital for the 1919 World Series. In larger cities, newspapers sought to outdo their competitors as to who could have the best and most elaborate scoreboard.
No rain checks had to be issued in Times Square yesterday afternoon. In spite of depressing weather conditions, thousands stopped in the spreading angle off the end of the Times building to watch the scoreboard, which reproduced in the most realistic fashion every play of Cincinnati's overwhelming victory over the White Sox. It was not merely a passing crowd, for the majority of the spectators stood through the drizzling rain for the whole 9 innings of amazing baseball, so accurately portrayed by the machinery of the New York Times. Umbrellas were thick at the start, but as the crowd increased and the rain abated, they were good-naturedly taken down. By the time the score was tied in the first 2 innings, both sidewalks on the outer edge of Times Square were packed solidly for an entire block. From the scoreboard itself, straight back past the 2 huts of the Mayor's Committee, enthusiastic baseball fans filled every available inch of space, and from the windows of nearby restaurants and hotels, hundreds more watched the progress of the game in comfort. Mounted policemen were added to the regular traffic force at the 43rd Street corners, but their chief duty was to keep the line of automobiles and wagons in motion, for the crowd itself was orderly and good-natured.
All over the country, crowds of thousands would form to watch the game. When the crowds began to grow too large, newspapers saw the opportunity to make even more of an impact, moving their scoreboards indoors, renting armories and theaters, and charging for admission. These scoreboards came in all shapes, sizes, and levels of sophistication, each scoreboard company and each newspaper seeking to outdo their competitors. From Stamford, Connecticut came the baseball Playograph, almost certainly the most popular brand, to the point that Playograph became a generic term for any electronic scoreboard. From New York City there was the Starball Player. Others had similarly glamorous names: the Noakes Electroscope Board, the Coleman Lifelike Scoreboard, the Compton Baseball Illustrating Apparatus, the Van Zyl Bulletin Board and Baseball Indicator, and, out of Scranton, Pennsylvania, arguably the most elaborate electronic scoreboard, the Jackson Mannequin Baseball Indicator. Rather than simply have elaborate light displays with a moving ball, inventor Thomas Jackson designed his mannequin indicator to use carved figures of baseball players, moving around a large field, just as the players were in the game, more akin to a puppet show than a scoreboard. Only a handful of these scoreboards were ever made, but they made headlines wherever they were seen. Baseball wasn't alone in the scoreboard game either. For a short while, the Baseball Playograph Company also manufactured a scoreboard for football, which they dubbed the Gridgraph. In 1921, baseball began to be broadcast over the radio, signaling the beginning of the end for the Playograph. It didn't happen right away, though. In many places, radio sets would be hooked up to loudspeakers, allowing fans to both listen and watch the game. Over time, as radio and then television became more popular and affordable, the need for the Playograph disappeared. One of the last scoreboards, dubbed Old Ironsides, belonged to the Salt Lake City Tribune Telegram and hung outside their building until well into the 1950s.